Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. We made it to OJ. We made it to OJ. I think what I think I think we decided, all right, I said, right about here. Oh, I thought Shrek no, the other guy, this guy uh came up, but I could be wrong. We might not get to the defense today. I mean, we should get to the defense today because that's 1 hour. But remember, we're at good speed. We're at 1.25. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Let's just press play.
And do you make any recordation when you see the vial on the 27th as to how much was in it when you started?
I have done that in the past. I'd like to reference my notes, see if I did in this case.
I just don't know what they're going to ask him. He has been such a solid freaking witness. I mean, dead on. He just took everything the defense said about how terrible everything was and made it right again. So I don't know what they're going to say. And I feel like this witness can handle it. This witness can handle being beaten up much better than Fung and Mazola. So I'm excited to see this.
There is a reference by Mr. Yamauchi as to how much he removed and used. I did not.
Well, I'm talking about the 27th when you commenced your testing.
No, I did not.
And why don't you make any recordation as to how much was in there when you started?
For the same reason, it's never been a issue before. I didn't feel that that was information that needed to be recorded.
So this has not come up previously in your how many years of experience? Was it 17 at the Los Angeles Police Department?
Well, I haven't been in serology that long, but in my time in serology, I've never had to provide this information before.
Now, I'd like to look back for a moment at the document that we marked, the inventory, which was People's 213 for identification. And this is the same page that we showed you before from 629.
Yes.
And on this page, did you write something out with respect to item number 17 as to how much was in the vial at that time?
Yes, I did.
What did you write?
I recorded 2 mLs, which stands for 2 milliliters.
Now, how did you come up with that figure?
It was an estimate. We opened up the envelope, held up the tube, and made a guess or an estimate as to what percentage of the vial.
So you didn't use any measuring technique in terms of a ruler or comparing it to another vial in order to come up with 2 milliliters?
No, I did not.
Now, in your experience in serology, do you have a lot of experience in dealing with these purple top tubes, estimating or guesstimating how much is in them?
Well, in that, no, I don't. I know the total volume of it, and that's what I based my guess on, but it's not something that we do on a regular basis. And, I don't have a lot of experience estimating the quantity.
Well, one would think that over 13 years, seeing these tubes over and over again, you kind of get a sense of what 2 milliliters looks like as opposed to 3 milliliters. Is that not true?
Well, you'd get a sense if you measured it. The way you get experience, the way you learn something is by doing it. And like I said, we have not measured the quantity of blood in vials as on a regular basis within the laboratory.
So when you had occasion, did you have occasion to look at this vial again for the purposes of actually measuring it after the 29th?
Yes, I did.
And directing your attention to September, excuse me. January the 4th of 1995. No, wait a minute. I'm sorry, September the 21st of 1994. Did you take a look at the vial again?
I'm referring again to my notes and a chronology page labeled L521 for 9/21/94. Yes, I did.
And did you measure it on that occasion?
Yes, I did.
How did you measure it?
At that point, what I did is took a blood vial of similar shape and size, but empty, placing it alongside of the blood vial, item number 17, filled up the empty vial with water to visually the same level as the other one, and then measured the quantity of water that was equivalent to the amount of blood.
How many times in the past have you done that procedure?
Oh, I've probably just done it a couple of times. It is not a common situation.
Do you know how long ago it was prior to September the 21st that you had last done that procedure?
No, I do not.
But you think you've only done it a couple of times before that?
Yeah, I don't remember any specific instance, but the fact that I figured out that that's how to do it in this case, I would assume that at some point I must have done it before.
Now, when you did that, how much was in it?
I determined to be present in the blood vial along with the centrifuge tube that was also in the package for there to be 3.8 or approximately 3.8 milliliters of blood.
So when you saw it on the 29th during the inventory
Of June.
of June, you said that there was 2 milliliters. And then when you saw it again on the 21st of September, you said that there was 3.8.
That's correct.
So there's a 1.8 milliliter difference.
Yes.
And do you think that you could be 1.8 milliliters off in making a guesstimate as to how much was in the tube?
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Well, how accurate do you believe you are in making a guesstimate as to something in one of these purple top tubes?
Sustain. Rephrase the question.
How accurate do you think you are in estimating what's in one of those tubes?
Obviously not very. I was far off.
And how do you know that the 3.8 was accurate?
Well, because I used a legitimate technique to actually measure it as opposed to just holding a vial up and eyeballing.
And that was the technique of filling the other vial up with water.
That's correct.
Do you have any idea what the margin of error is in that technique?
In that technique, I would say it's probably fairly small. That's why I said approximately 3.8 milliliters. My guess is that the error on that would be less than 0.1 or 0.2 milliliters.
Forward.
Right. Now, had you ever seen anyone else measure that vial in your presence?
No.
I'm not talking about by the test tube method, but by any other method.
Not that I recall.
Now, on the same date, on September the 21st, rather, did you also measure the contents of the vial number 60 and also 59?
Yes, I did.
And did you use the same technique?
The technique involving equivalent amount of water, yes.
Can you give us the measurements on those two?
Yes. For item number 59, the blood vial, I found approximately 7.2 milliliters of blood. And for item number 60, approximately 5.5 milliliters of blood.
And then on September the 27th, did you give release some blood to a defense expert, Mr. Regal?
Again, referring to my notes, a handwritten receipt labeled L309. Yes, I did. I released approximately 1 milliliter of blood from item number 59, Mark Brown, Simpson, Nicole, and approximately 1 milliliter of blood from item number 60, marked Goldman, Ronald.
Did you give anything else to Mr. Regal at that time in terms of reference blood?
Yes, I did.
What?
At that time, I also cut out for him approximately a 1-inch square section of each of item number 72 and 82, which were the blood swatches that were provided to us from the two victims from the coroner's office.
And then on September the 30th, did you release some more blood to Mr. Regal?
Referring to my notes, there is a handwritten receipt marked as L310. And on that date, September 30th, 1994, I released approximately 1 milliliter of blood to Mr. Regal from the tube, item number 17, marked O.J. Simpson.
Now, how did you come up with the approximate of 1 milliliter for the 27th of September and the 30th of September?
For doing that, I used with a pipetter, as opposed to the glass pipette, which is not graduated or not mentioned before. We have mechanical pipetters that you can set to withdraw and deliver a specific amount of a fluid. And that's what I used in this case, transferring it from the vial into the centrifuge tubes previously described.
Do you know who Mr. Regal is?
Yes, I do.
Who is he?
He is retired, the previous director of the Orange County Crime Laboratory.
And is he now, was he working for the defense at that time?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So directing your attention to the date of January the 9th of 1994, did you return some evidence on that date from serology to the evidence control unit?
January 994.
95, I'm sorry.
Again, referring to, there's actually many notes under that date. Yes, I did.
And can you tell us with respect to the reference files, items 17, 59, and 60, in this case, whether you returned those items?
Miss Glow, hello. How are you? It is good to see you.
In a sealed condition to the evidence control unit?
Yes, I did.
What other items did you return on that date?
On that date, I returned, we had been storing up to that date many of the blood or biological evidence items in the serology freezer. And at that point, I inventoried and returned these items. I can go through the list if you like.
Yeah, I know it's a little time consuming, but if you could.
Okay, there was one package that included items 72 through 74.
Is there a document that we can use instead for this purpose if there are multiple items?
I don't know if there is a document that doesn't have significant other writing on it.
All right, proceed.
And that same package also contained item number 82 through 85. There was one package that contained item number 115 through 117. Another package that contained item number 170 through 175. Another package to contain item number 293 through 309. Another package purported to contain item number 118 through 120. An additional package marked to contain item number 78 through 80 and 86 and 87. Another package marked to contain item number 91, 93, and 94 through 102. A box that was marked to contain item numbers 1 through 9, 11 through 14, 20 through 34, 37 through 39, 41 through 45,
Slow down.
47 through 52, and 54 through 57. I believe that was the last one.
And when you returned those items to the evidence control unit, were they returned in a sealed condition?
Yes, they were.
And I'd like to turn to some of the testing that you performed in this case, Mr. Matheson. First of all, when blood evidence is collected from a crime scene and then submitted to the serology laboratory for analysis, what kind of information are you as a serologist looking for to derive from that blood evidence?
Well, first off, we want to know whether in fact it is blood. If that's what we have, if there is blood present, we want to know whether or not that blood is human in origin. And if that is a fact, then we continue on to identify the different genetic markers that might be present or identifiable in a blood stain or an exemplar blood sample.
And are the tests that you perform in serology known as tests of exclusion?
That's a term for it, yes.
What does that mean?
Well, the idea being is there aren't any tests, particularly in conventional serology, that would make a definitive match between a blood stain and a particular individual. They can merely include somebody, in particular that can exclude somebody. If you are doing an analysis and you find a marker that is in a stain that is not in a reference sample, then you can say absolutely that that blood stain could not have come from that individual. It's an exclusion.
When you are doing your testing, do you have to decide what genetic markers that you're going to test for in a given stain?
Sometimes it depends on the quantity.
Now, when you're going about deciding what kind of test you're going to perform, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to include the suspect or exclude the suspect?
Now, the idea, if you have to limit your test due to sample size or some other consideration, the idea is to try and find the test that is most likely to exclude a particular person.
Well, why is it that you do it that way?
We want to get the most information possible. The idea is to find out whether or not a sample could or could not have come from somebody. And if you only have one shot on it, you want to do the one that's most likely to exclude somebody.
Can you give us an example of picking a genetic marker to test for the purposes of exclusion as opposed to picking one in order to try to include someone?
Yes, we have a variety of markers that are available to us. Some are better at differentiating between two stains than other ones. Example might be an enzyme that goes by the initials of ADA. Approximately in the neighborhood of 94 to 97% of the population is a type 1. The remainder of the population is a type 2, 1, or a 2. If you use that test, odds are, 94 to 97% of the time, you're going to get a type 1, and that doesn't give you a whole lot of information. There's another test that goes by the initials of PGM or PGM subtyping that rather than having a choice of a 1, a 2, 1, or a 2, you have 10 different possible combinations. And your likelihood then of having, if a blood stain in fact did not come from a particular person, the likelihood of excluding under that system is much better than the one I previously described.
So when you say that you're trying to pick out tests to exclude, what would that mean in reference to the two examples that you gave us?
So it means I would choose the PGM subtype system as my best choice of between the two of them. My odds are if I choose ADA, I'm going to include them because most people are the same type. My odds are better of excluding using the other system.
Now, you've been using a term that you said, a term called genetic marker. What do you mean when you're talking about genetic marker?
Well, genetic marker is something that exists within the human body. The term genetic means it's derived from your parents. You have to have a certain combination of types because of the genetic information that's supplied to you by your parents. A marker just means it's something that we can use to identify something within the system. An example of a genetic marker is the ABO blood typing system. You're a type A, type B, type O, or type AB. Your type is determined by the types of your parents, making it genetic, and it's a way of distinguishing potentially two blood samples.
Well, when you use this term genetic marker, are you implying in that the tests that you have done are DNA type tests?
No.
Why is the term genetic marker used then?
Well, the term genetic marker had been around for quite a bit longer than forensic DNA testing. Like I mentioned before, genetic merely refers to the fact that it's determined, it's inherited, it's determined by your parents.
So could you view something like eye color, different people having different color eyes as being a genetic marker? Would that be an appropriate usage of the term?
As an analogy or an example, eye color could be considered a genetic marker. Your eye color is determined by heredity from your parents.
And have you heard of the term polymorphic?
Yes, I have.
What does that mean?
That refers to a situation where you have something within the body, let's say the ABO blood type system, that exists, performs the same function in every person, but exists in different forms.
So again, I'm not sure if this analogy would be proper, but could you view eye color then as being a polymorphism, and that different people have different color eyes, but all eyes hopefully perform the same task?
That's correct. And you see through it, but the eye color is different, but doesn't affect the process.
Now, are these markers, these genetic markers that you're testing for, are they polymorphic?
Yes, they are. Otherwise, there would not be a reason to do it.
Now, how many of these polymorphic enzymes are used in forensic testing?
Oh, I'm not sure the exact number. I believe we within our laboratory regularly use it's 7 or 8, something like that. I have to refer to some notes to remember exactly.
Are there many more genetic markers in people's blood in addition to those 7 or 8?
Yes.
And how are those chosen?
Well, the choice as to what to use forensically is you want something that gives you a good percentage breakdown of the population. In other words, the one I mentioned before, the ADA, is actually a poor polymorphic enzyme in that the majority of the people are the exact same type. We use it for other reasons because it's very stable. You want a marker, it'd be perfect if you had one that had, say, 4 different types, and each type was 25% of the population. You also need a stable or a system in forensics that is stable, because our samples by nature are outside the body. They are deposited in a variety of different places and begin to degrade. You want something that doesn't degrade very quickly.
When you say stable, is that what you're talking about, that they don't degrade as easily?
That's correct.
Do these blood type markers that you're testing for, do they change through someone's lifetime?
No, they do not. They stay consistent.
And is it possible, when you've done a test on a variety of these markers, to calculate some sort of a percentage of the population that has those markers?
Yes, it is.
Now, you used the term ABO blood type system, and you gave us a description of that. And you said there are how many types?
There are the 4 common types: A, B, O, and AB.
And in addition to this ABO system, is there another set of systems that you're looking at when you're testing for genetic markers?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, there are a variety of them that are called enzymes, which is a chemical that exists in your body to perform function to help keep you alive. And there are a number of these enzymes that are polymorphic, exist in different types, and can be identified.
Can you just give us a simple explanation of what an enzyme is?
Well, an enzyme is something that catalyzes or makes a reaction occur. Simply, it performs a function within your body that your body needs to exist.
All right, Mr. Goldberg, would this be an appropriate point?
Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief recess for the morning. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, conduct any deliberations, or allow anybody to communicate with you. We'll stand in recess for 15 minutes, and Mr. Matheson, you may step down, sir. All right. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. All the parties are again present. Jury is not present. All right, let's have the jurors, please.
I'm sorry, how long were you staring at this stupid thing? There we go.
Like that, we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Mr. Gregory Matheson is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Goldberg. And Mr. Goldberg, you may continue.
Thank you. Mr. Matheson, yesterday you were testifying about using a process called electrophoresis.
That's correct.
And can you tell us what that is?
Electrophoresis is a technique that is used to identify the different enzyme types, these polymorphic enzymes that we were talking about before.
So is electrophoresis used on ABO or just the enzymes?
Well, in the case of the type of testing we're talking about here, is not used in the ABO. It's used in enzymes, and it's used in other purposes too.
And can you give us a explanation of how the electrophoresis technique works?
Well, like in the ABO system where you have different types that can be identified, in these enzymes, they also exist in different types. Example being a PGM that I mentioned earlier. In its simple form, it's a type 1, a type 2-1, and a 2. Each of these types differ slightly in their structure or their charge. That's one of the ways we use to tell them apart. The electrophoretic technique involves taking a glass plate that's approximately about 8 inches square, pouring what's called an agarose gel on it, which is kind of like a jello-like substance on the top of it, placing the samples on, like you take small portions of the blood or the cloth, absorb it onto threads, insert it down into the gel, all in a line. This then is placed on a cooling bath, and electricity is allowed to run through it from one side to the other in one direction. And this basically kind of pushes the enzymes along, and they travel at different rates based on this charge that's on them, the slight differences. After a predetermined amount of time, you stop that electrical process and put chemicals on them over the top that work with the enzymes so you can see where the band's lined up. In most of the systems, you identify the type by the quantity and location of those bands on the gel. And in some systems, you do it as far as location and quantity along with the intensity or the darkness or brightness of each of the individual bands.
So after running this electrophoresis gel, you get some kind of a banding pattern.
That's correct.
And then what do you do with that banding pattern after it appears?
Well, each different type of an enzyme will give a unique banding pattern, so you're then able to interpret it. You don't just do it from memory, though. On each of those gels or each of the plates that I was talking about, which with the system that we have set up, we can run up to 12 samples on it. Out of those 12 samples, 3 or 4 of them may be control or known samples of all the different types that are present in the system. So you'd have a situation where you'd have a sample, a control, a couple samples, and a control. That way you can make direct comparisons between your unknown samples and your known types and make the call and determine what type it is.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to mark as people's next in order. It's 215 for identification. Another board entitled Evidence Testing Demonstration.
All right, 215. So we put that up just a little higher. $14.92. Can you see that? Up a little. Thank you. Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. Sir, direct your attention to this exhibit 215 for identification. The first photograph, photograph number 1, door to serology. Have that on the Elmo. What does that photograph depict?
It depicts the door into the serology lab from that hallway from the chart that kind of goes around in a square around the laboratory itself. It also shows, we were talking about windows before, though there are no windows to the outside, each of the laboratories has a couple of windows that look from the lab itself into the hallway.
So from the hallway, you can see what's going on inside the laboratory.
In most areas, some areas you can't see.
Now, directing your attention to cell number 2 on this demonstration exhibit, what does that show?
That's a photograph that's taken if you were to walk just inside of the door shown in cell 1 and turn to the left. It looks down through the serology laboratory. What you see on the left is a personal workbench area or one of the areas of one of our criminalists. To the right, you can just barely make out a little bit of a layout table, and then farther back on the right is one of our group or analytical areas.
And can you see where the electrophoresis machines are kept in this particular photograph?
Yes, you can.
Where's that?
By using the pointer towards the right of the photograph, you can see these reddish ends. Those are all the electrophoresis cooling plates or cooling tanks that I talked about earlier.
Now, directing our attention to cell number 3 on this exhibit, what does this show?
Okay, as I described in the process before in the electrophoresis, you pour a gel on a plate that's about 8 inches square, something like that. That is depicted in the picture, one of those plates. The gel is on the glass part there that you actually can't see the gel because it's clear. Then there's a row of slits that are put in it where the samples are introduced. It's called loading the gel. Each one of these red marks that you see is indicative of either a unknown sample or a control or known sample.
And going through the 4 items here, can you tell us where the unknown samples would be as opposed to the known samples?
Well, my practice in running a gel is I put a unknown in the first, a known sample in the second, unknown in the third and the fourth, and then a known one would go in the 5th spot.
Okay, when you say unknown, you're talking about what?
Anytime I refer to an unknown sample, it's an evidence sample. We don't know the results of it at this point.
Okay, and the known is what?
The known is a portion of blood that we know the source of that blood, and we've already characterized and know what the types of them are.
And is that what you use to compare the unknown against?
Yes.
Now, after the plate is loaded, what's done with the plate?
Okay, the plate then is laid in this or the 4th cell here that's marked electrophoresis. The white part in between the 2 red ends is a cooling plate. There's a bath or a mechanism not too far away from here, which has a refrigerant in it that lowers the temperature of the water. The water is then circulated back and forth through these plates so that the electrophoresis gel is kept at a low temperature. So it's laid on top of that.
And finally, if we look at the 5th cell where it says run gel, what is this showing?
Okay, this shows a couple of different tanks side by side. The right one here has a gel laying on the cooling bath. To actually run the electrophoresis system, there's white, what are filter paper called wicks on either side of it. They are in a tank that has a buffer solution. The wicks are laid across the edges of the gel on both sides, and then there's cords that go up to the power supply located towards the top of the picture, and electricity is run through the buffer, through the wicks, across the gel, and then back into the power supply. They have to be kept cold because most of our systems in this type run at approximately 350, 400 volts, and that would, if there wasn't a cooling system, it would actually heat the gels up and dry them out, and the process wouldn't work.
Now, if this were a real case and this evidence were to be run, what would you have to do after the item had been, the gel had been placed on the plate as depicted in cell 5?
Well, like
do you close, is that door, the plexiglass door, closed or what?
Well, right, like I mentioned, the wicks would have to be laid from the tanks onto the edges of the gel. You'd close this lid because you don't want to come in contact with the voltage that's running through it, and the wires that are at the back of the unit are placed into the power supply, which is above it.
Now, if we could go back to cell number 4 for a second. Can you point out for us where it is that the samples are that have been loaded onto the gel in this photograph?
They're a little tough to see, but you see that the gel is being held up. The gel is on a piece of glass, being held up on its side, and they're the reddish spots that show up about 2 inches or so from the bottom of the gel.
So are those closer to the analyst's right hand or left hand?
They're closer to his right hand.
And can you tell us, using this photograph, when the machine is hooked up and the electricity is actually running through it, can you describe for us what happens?
Well, as far as, like I mentioned in the description before, the current runs through it. There's a positive side and a negative side, and it runs from the positive, the negative side and a positive side, runs from the negative to the positive side, and the enzymes that are present in there, they are such that they move along through the gel at a slightly different rate depending on the structure of them, and the structure is what determines the type.
So which way do they move as it's placed on the machine this way? Would they go from his right hand to his left hand or the other way?
Well, it depends on the system. This system here that he's setting up appears to be a PGM subtype system that we use, and it would be running from the right to the left.
And when they run from the right to the left, can you actually see some sort of a banding pattern with your naked eye after it's finished?
No, you cannot.
What do you have to do in order to see that?
After the runtime, you remove this gel from the cooling plate, and you have prepared what are called development chemicals. And they are optimized for a particular enzyme system. The chemicals contain, or the solution contains chemicals that react with the enzyme so that we can see them. Normally, if it's a visible thing you can see with your eye in white light, it's a dark bluish, almost black type of band forms. There's other type that react with what are called fluorescent chemicals, and you have to look at them under ultraviolet light.
And after the plate is run and the development chemicals are put on, is something done to preserve that plate?
Yes, the plate itself is not preserved. However, the results are photographed. They're actually photographed several times throughout the development process. It doesn't just pop up all at once. It slowly becomes visible in most of the systems, and you take pictures along the way.
All right. And do you read your results off the plate or off the photographs?
Actually, to some extent, both. You read them from both of them.
How complex is this technique? How complex was this for you to learn how to do this technique?
Thank you so much, Miss Chloe. I missed you too. I knew that you were moving. I knew that it took a long, long, long time, though. You know that. Ah, I can't even imagine. I hate moving. I hate it. It's one of the worst things in the world, I think, is moving. I know that people, they get to hire companies that just come in and do it for you. That would be the way to go. But yeah, I am doing a live stream on Sunday, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, as a thank you to everybody who has supported this channel. I'm going to give away some memberships. You already have one. You've had one forever, so you won't get anything. But you'll get to talk to everybody if you come. You can complain about moving. We can complain about moving the entire stream if you want. We could just vent about moving the whole stream because everybody in that stream has been through it and knows how bad it is. Some people have been through it really, 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 really recently too. So you're not alone. I know some of the people who have moved recently it's been hard on them. It's not been easy. So whatever challenges you face. Now yours was a long move, longer than all the other ones. That's for sure. Months and months and months.
Well, it's not a terribly easy technique, but it also isn't difficult. I was able to, I mentioned yesterday a course that I took back at the FBI Academy, which lasted about 2 weeks in duration. During that 2 weeks, I went into it with having used this technique maybe less than half a dozen times or so, just practicing in the laboratory. And within the 2 weeks, I became fairly proficient at running samples.
Now, thank you. You said it was possible to calculate the frequencies of people that have different genetic markers that you've tested. Is there a rule known as the product rule that you apply in doing this?
Yes.
What is that?
What that is it allows you to determine the types of different markers you identify in a stain. It's possible to, just through statistics, going back to the ABO blood typing system, that a certain percentage of the population is a type A, a certain percentage B, and so on. This is also true of the different enzymes that I'm talking about. So once you have identified the type, say in 2 different markers, ABO blood system and maybe this PGM system that we talked about, you can multiply together the percentages of each of the types that are present and come out with a smaller percentage of the population that has those 2 types together.
Can you give us an example of that?
Well, starting with the ABO system, about roughly half of the population is a type O, or about 50% of the population. If that was the only test that was available for us, we could analyze, say, a blood stain, we determine that it is a type O, and the best information out of that is that half the people in this room could have contributed that blood stain. Well, then we'd go ahead and run one of these additional genetic markers, and let's say out of that we identify a type that also exists in 50% of the population. Well, now we have 2 pieces of information. You can multiply those 2 together, and now you know that that stain down there that is an ABO type O plus this other marker exists in about 25% of the population, or about 1 of every 4 people rather than 1 out of every 2. With each additional marker you add, you keep multiplying that percentage, and the number of possible people that could have left the stain gets smaller and smaller.
So if you had a third marker in your hypothetical that was also 50%, would you multiply 25 times 50 for 12 and a half?
Yeah, I'm going to object to that last answer as being lack of foundation, and I think we need to approach on this.
Oh. Yes, that's correct. With each additional marker, if it was half, you'd keep cutting the number in half. It'd go from 1 in 4 to 1 in 8 to 1 in 16, and so on.
And is this use of the product rule in calculating the percentage of the population that has a given set of genetic markers, one that is accepted in the forensic science community?
Yes, it is.
For how long has this been used?
Which?
If you know, the product rule in terms of applying it in this context with ABO systems and the other genetic markers.
Sustain.
Well, the ABO system plus the other enzymes systems that you type.
Say. What system?
Well, you said that there are about 8 or so enzyme systems that you type.
That we have the capability of typing in our laboratory, yes.
And is that pretty standard throughout the forensic community that those are the systems that are used?
With some slight variation, but yes, it's the core set.
With respect to the systems that you are using in your laboratory, how long, if you know, has the product rule been used to calculate the frequencies of those systems together with ABO?
Well, it's been used in our laboratory since I started, which was in 1978. And I believe as the markers have become available, they've been used with each new one as it is developed.
Okay. Now, in terms of the conventional serology and the electrophoresis test that you've been discussing this morning, is there a problem with cross-contamination between the samples as you're doing the test?
I'm sorry, you repeat the question?
Is there a problem with cross-contamination as you're testing these items?
If I understand what you're saying, I mean, you always want to be careful that you don't allow one item to come in contact with another one so that you have the potential of transferring information between the 2.
How sensitive is this particular test?
Well, these,
Sustain.
How much of a sample do you need in order to be able to test an item of evidence using electrophoresis?
for the systems that we use, we need a sample that has, some color to it, towards a pale to dark red, approximately a 1/4 inch long, thread sized is about the amount of sample you need to get a good result.
And if we were to define contamination as being introducing something onto a piece of biological evidence that was to cause the evidence to be mistyped, what would you need to do in order to contaminate biological evidence using that definition?
Well, in the area of the conventional type of typing we're talking about, you don't get results with samples that you can't see. It would have to be a sufficient quantity that you're visibly seeing that you're transferring sample from one to the other.
So it would be something that you would visually see?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, has there ever been a problem of contamination, as I've defined it, inside of your laboratory in the serology section?
A problem as far as contamination in the conventional systems?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge, no.
And in the area of PCR testing, do you use kits that are manufactured by an outside firm?
Yes, we do.
Who does that come from?
The company's changed hands a couple times. It was originally Cetus. I believe it's Roche Biochemicals now.
Okay. And with respect to those kits, to your knowledge, has there ever been any defect in the kits that you were supplied?
Well, I was made aware of a time in our laboratory where we were getting results showing up in our controls and other areas in the process that was eventually, we believe, traced back to a particular lot of kits.
Was that prior to June 14th of last year?
Yes, it was.
Can you give us an estimation of how much prior?
At least a couple months. I'm not exactly sure of the date.
And what was this problem?
Well, we were showing a type within that system was typable or becoming apparent in our controls in areas where we were not expecting to see any result at all.
What do you mean it was becoming apparent in the controls?
Well, there are controls built into the system that allow you to check whether or not there is a presence of contamination. Contamination is a fact of life when it comes to forensic samples. So you always have controls built in, both the controls that are picked up at the scene, plus controls that are introduced at different stages of the testing that should come out blank when you're all done, should not yield a result. And if a result is obtained during, in some of these controls, it shows that there is some sort of contamination occurring.
And did the controls in fact work for that purpose in this incident?
Yes, they did.
Now, was this a incident that you were personally involved in or had personal involvement with?
No.
Did you ever read any documentation around the time that it occurred pertaining to the incident?
No, I did not.
And how was it resolved?
I was advised by the people that were doing the test that upon receiving a new lot kit from the company, we were no longer seeing that type showing up in our controls.
When you say a lot, what are you talking about?
Well, when things are produced or manufactured, they put a lot number on it so that you can track. I would assume they came from the same batch of chemicals or whatever in the factory, but there is a assigned lot number to a sequence of reagents or kits.
Okay. Now, going back to a conventional testing for a moment, in the area of conventional testing, does the laboratory take proficiency tests?
Yes.
And what are those?
Well, we subscribe to a couple of different outside companies that supply us with unknown samples. One of them is Collaborative Testing Service, and the other is CAP, or the College of American Pathologists. They send us case-like samples. We don't know the results of them. And as supervisor, I'd receive these items and either divide, if there's sufficient sample, divide them up between a number of the analysts within the laboratory, or if it was a small sample, assigned to one particular analyst. And they would test them. We would then submit our results to whatever company it happened to be, and then get the results back from them at a later time.
And do you also take proficiency tests in the area of PCR testing in your laboratory?
Yes.
And how's that done?
The similar process. As a matter of fact, both CAP and CTS now are gearing them more towards the DNA process than conventional.
And have those proficiency tests been passed?
Yes.
And we were talking a little bit about the substrate controls and the use of the controls yesterday. When you're doing your conventional testing, do you use those controls in any way?
Yes, I do, for part of the testing.
For what part do you use them?
I use them during the course of determining whether or not a sample is human, and in the ABO testing.
When you use a substrate control, or when you use substrate controls in this case, did you use the entire cloth square or a portion of it?
Just a portion.
What do you do with it in order to take a portion?
I would open up the bindle that contains it, and I would make a cutting from it that is of appropriate size for the test that I want to run. I may not do a cutting. Sometimes I'll actually take tweezers or forceps and tease out a couple of the threads or fibers that are present.
And why is that used in the ABO system?
It's because it's known that there are things out there besides ABO substances that will give activity or results that can mimic or look like ABO. Certain types of cloth can tend to give you what's called a false positive for an ABO antigen, which is one of the things we look at when we're typing for the ABO system. And you want to know if the surface where you're staying on is going to have this type of activity present.
Was the laboratory using substrate controls prior to the use of PCR technology?
Yes,
And was it because of the ABO system for the reasons that you just described that you did that?
yes, that's correct.
What about for the other genetic markers that you're typing? Do you use the substrate controls for that?
No, I do not.
Why do you not use them for those?
Well, as opposed to the ABO system, where I mentioned there are things out there that can mimic the same type of activity, that is not true for the enzyme systems that we use.
And what about the idea of testing them for the purposes of determining whether there was any typable information on the substrate control? Why wouldn't you do that when you're doing electrophoresis?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I do use it for the human test. And if that comes up negative, there is no biological material present that it would give me a result.
Would you expect to get any results on electrophoresis if you saw a substrate control that had no visible blood on it?
If we're talking about a blood stain, no, I would not.
Now, in June and September of last year, did you do certain testing on some of the items bearing the DR number of this case?
Yes, I did.
And did you generate reports related to that testing?
Yes.
This time I'd like to mark what's called the serology results chart as people's next in order,
That'd be
216.
216. It could be.
Sir, direct your attention to people's 216 for identification. Have you seen this chart before?
Yes, I have.
Well, didn't we mark this earlier as 202?
The chart?
Ms. Martinez confirms that we
Yes,
did.
you did.
All right.
We did.
People's 202. Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you. Sir, showing you people's 202 for identification, does that summarize information that was contained on reports that you generated in connection with your testing in this case?
It summarizes information from the reports plus some additional information from some of the notes.
All right. Now, starting first with the notes, what kind of notes do you generate when you're testing items contemporaneously with the testing?
Well, while the testing is going on, what is prepared is a serology case summary sheet, which will eventually have a summary of all the results on each of the items. While I'm doing this, I'm referring to some notes I have of my analysis from June of 1994, just so I can make sure I remember all the different forms. So I described there's a serology case summary sheet. There is also what has been previously described serology item description notes. Those are the notes where we give a little bit more detailed description of the actual item. And then there are what are called electrophoresis worksheets that are created during the electrophoresis process. Each plate that you saw earlier will have a sheet that goes along with it to identify the different samples and where they are located on the gel. There may also be just note pages, blank pages. Sometimes we'll write on the back of some of these for some additional information.
And are the notations, the notes that you just referred to, ones that have been labeled with L numbers and provided to both sides in discovery?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, which are the reports that are done at the time of the test? Which are the two types of reports that are done contemporaneously with the test?
Well, the type that is done contemporaneously with the test, the electrophoresis worksheet, which would go along with each of the electrophoresis runs I described. There is also, I mentioned that sometimes we'll take notes on the back of a page. In the ABO blood typing test, we don't have necessarily a form where that's recorded. A lot of times we just write the raw data on the back of one of the other pages, and that's done while you're actually doing the analysis.
And what type of information, or where did the information come from that was used to compile this chart? Was it just the reports, the analyzed evidence reports, or also the electrophoresis worksheets?
I believe information that went onto this report came from my reports, or they were put on this came from my reports. Combination of that, the case summary sheet and the electrophoresis worksheets.
Now, does this particular chart Who actually did that testing physically?
It depends on which part you're talking about. I did some, and then I observed some placement, and some of the actual hands-on work on the electrophoresis was done by Mr. Yamauchi.
Now, when you say that the electrophoresis was done by Mr. Yamauchi, what did he do? Was it in your presence?
Most of it was, not all of it.
Well, what did you see him doing?
Well, one of the most important parts of that test, as far as sample continuity, is recording on the electrophoresis sheet which sample goes in which lane, and then making sure that the sample you're saying is on the sheet is actually in that lane. I sat alongside of him while we sampled, to open up, in the case of, say, item number 49, opened up the bindle, cut a small portion from the swatch. It was then placed into a numbered well, which corresponded with the number on the electrophoresis sheet, and I watched him then transfer that into the gel, along with the exemplar samples and the known standard samples that were included.
So he did the physical manipulations in terms of loading the gel,
When it came to the electrophoresis work, yes.
and that was in your presence.
Yes, it was.
And then what happened after the gel had been run and the results were ready to be read?
At that point, he took photographs of them. When I was available, I co-read them with him, and we determined what types were present on the plate.
Now, sir, do you recall testifying about the tests when you testified at the preliminary hearing? In this case?
Yes, I do.
Counsel, directing your attention to page 4 of the preliminary hearing on July the 8th, 1994. I'd like to read between lines 2 and lines 23. Between 2 and 23.
It's the
Does the
same.
court have a copy?
Yes, I do. Page 4. It's the same.
Prior and consistent statement. Well, hold on for a second.
Saying 1235 is an exception. Is that yes?
Yes.
Proceed.
Sir, at the preliminary hearing, did you testify as follows to the following questions? Question, I think where we left off yesterday, I think you indicated that you tested item 49, which was the blood drop from the trail left at 875 South Bundy, shown in the close-up in photograph E and shown in perspective in photograph D. Do you recall saying that? Answer, that's correct. Question, and you tested that initially to determine if it was human origin. Answer, yes. Question, and with respect to the blood samples that were retrieved from the defendant and from Ronald Goldman, Nicole Brown Simpson, with respect to those samples, did you test them also? Answer, yes, I did. Question, what test did you perform on those? Answer, on those I performed the ABO blood typing test, the group 1 enzyme electrophoresis test, and the PGM subtype electrophoresis test. Question, and did you also subject the blood drop from the trail, item 49, to those same tests? Answer, yes, I did. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Now, sir, when you answered those questions, did you specify that the physical loading onto the gel was actually done by Mr. Yamauchi in your presence?
No, I did not.
And why not?
I didn't think it was necessary.
Were the two of you working together as a team in doing this?
Yes, we were.
And did you observe all of the critical parts in the analysis?
Yes, I did.
And were you trying to mislead anyone or leave Mr. Yamauchi out in answering those questions in that way?
No, not at all.
is it common in your laboratory for analysts to work together in the laboratory using a team approach such as that? Does that happen?
It happens, yes.
And where you observe the critical aspects of what the other analyst did?
Yes.
And is that what happens with respect to the typing on 17, 59, 60, and 49?
Yes, it is.
Now, Mr. Matheson, did you also generate an analyzed evidence report describing the testing that you did and Mr. Yamauchi did on these items?
Yes, I did.
And I'd like to mark that as people's next in order. It's L7778 for council's benefit.
Mr. Robertson, next in order, people. 216.
It's entitled Analyzed Evidence Report. The date the analysis complete is 6/28.
All right, proceed.
Thank you. We're going to have to lower the serology results chart a little bit in order to put this on.
Maybe necessary to move it entirely.
What?
Remove it entirely. Well, let's try that. Let's try it.
Sir, do you recognize the document that we just put on the Elmo People's 216 for identification?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
That is a copy of my analyzed evidence report.
And was this analyzed evidence report generated, when was this generated in relationship to the testimony at the preliminary hearing that we just read?
Well, it was generated immediately following testing prior to the preliminary hearing.
Okay. Can we see the first full paragraph where that starts with ABO testing was performed? Mr. Matheson, did you write this form?
Yes, I did.
And could you just read for us what you wrote in the first full paragraph saying all that starts all ABO typing?
Well, the first paragraph is just that one line. It says, and I'm reading from a copy of the report myself rather than off one of the monitors. All ABO typing was performed exclusively by Matheson B8927.
And what was the next paragraph starting with criminalist Yamauchi?
Well, the next paragraph starts with enzyme typing for ESD, PGM, PGM subtype, and GLO were performed by criminalist Yamauchi G8880, period. All evidence handling, including original sampling and transfers to the gels, were witnessed by Matheson, period. All results were confirmed in person or by photographs by Matheson.
So why did you write these two paragraphs to describe what you did and what Mr. Yamauchi did?
To be accurate as far as exactly who performed what tests for the report.
Okay. And you wrote this paragraph out prior to testifying at the preliminary hearing where you said that you did the electrophoresis test?
Yes, I did.
All right. Thank you. Now, we've been using the term reference samples. What does that mean?
But the way I use it is it refers to the known blood samples or blood samples of a known source related to a case.
And our serology results chart, how are those designated?
The reference samples that are designated on the chart are first indicated by their item number and then in parentheses by the person that they were taken from.
And then the little blood drops would designate what?
As far as the icons go, the blood drops reference stain or evidence material.
And when you do these tests, are you comparing the results from the reference samples to the results that you get on the unknowns that are designated with these little blood drops?
Yes.
Now, in September of 1994, did you also do another series of testing on items that are represented in the people's serology results chart?
Yes, I started some testing in September.
And on September 11th, what item numbers that are on the results chart did you test, if any?
Okay, on September 11th?
Yeah.
Was when I started working on item number 42, item number 44, item number 54, item number 84, A and B, and item number 85, A and B.
And on September the 20th, did you do some testing on items that are contained on the serology results chart?
I'm going to be referring to my notes. I received some additional items on September 18th as far as doing the analysis. Yes, there was some analysis done on September 20th.
Which items?
That would be on item number 13 and item number 37.
When you say 13 on the chart, we have 13A. Is that the little cutting that you testified to earlier this morning
Yes,
that you took off the one of the socks, item 13?
that's correct.
And did you also do some testing on September the 27th on items that are contained on the serology results chart?
Again, referring to electrophoresis worksheet, I did run some samples on that date, yes.
Which ones?
That would be item number 57 and item number 78.
And where were those items stored during the testing that you did in September?
They were in the freezer in the serology unit.
Now, with regard to these various items that are on the serology results chart, when you were looking at the Los Angeles Police Department evidence disposition summary boards, People's 177, did it contain the packaging of these various items represented on the photographs on those exhibits?
Yes, it did.
And when you were doing the testing, were the items coming out of the original packaging or the transmittal packaging that was used later on when it was sent out?
I believe out of the original.
But in each case, did you look at the item number and DR number prior to the test to confirm what you were testing?
Yes.
Now, going back to the serology results chart, there's a column that says ABO. What does that refer to?
That refers to the ABO blood typing system that I've described previously.
And what does ESD mean right next to ABO?
ESD are the initials for one of the enzymes that we analyzed that I previously described.
And what about PGM subtype?
Same thing, it's a enzyme that can be broken down into types.
And EAP, what does that mean?
EAP also are initials standing for another enzyme that we use.
And then what's in the consistent with column?
Consistent with are a list of names that are placed there when a comparison could be made between the evidence samples and the exemplar or reference samples.
And what about the frequency? What does that represent?
Frequency gives an indication of how common that combination of types occurs in the general population.
Now, on this particular chart, there's a number of items that are in blue that say INC. What does that mean?
INC stands for inconclusive.
How is that reported when you actually write out a analyzed evidence report?
Any result that's determined to be inconclusive at the time that it's run is written strictly as either INC or inconclusive on the report with no indication of a type given.
So it wouldn't say on your analyzed evidence report, for instance, for item number 42, inconclusive B.
No, definitely not.
And where does that information come from?
Comes from a combination of the case summary notes and the original electrophoresis worksheet.
Well, why don't you write exactly word for word what's on the
Okay, that's weird. Blood under Nicole Brown. You would think there's a ton. Inconclusive and very weak. I don't know what the top of this is. Like, I don't know what's at the top of this. But what? Okay.
electrophoresis worksheet and the case summary notes
EAP.
onto the analyzed evidence report? Why don't they match 100%?
Well, the electrophoresis worksheet is just that. It's a worksheet that's being used while the test is being run. You're recording the conditions of the run and you're recording all observations and not interpretations, but observations that are made on the plate. We even include guesses at that point and if it's a guess, it's marked as inconclusive. That information then is transferred over to the summary sheet intact, kind of summarizing the information on the worksheet. If it's inconclusive, it's marked as inc, and the potential or possible guess of the type is placed in that column. However, when the report is written, it just reflects inconclusive.
So is an inconclusive statement, if it says inconclusive B, does that mean that it could be wrong?
It's
in your
possible.
judgment? Is that why you say inconclusive?
Oh, inconclusive means that just that it is not a conclusive decision or conclusive result as to what the analysis showed.
And does that mean that as a forensic scientist, when you say something is inconclusive, let's say on your worksheet you said it was inconclusive B, would you be willing to report in court that it was in fact a B?
No, I would not.
Okay. And why is that?
Again, it's not a conclusive result. I don't want to put something down on my report or present to court unless I'm sure as to what the result is.
So what is the point then of writing an inconclusive B, for example, on the electrophoresis worksheet, if you don't put it on the analyzed evidence report and you're not willing to testify in court that it was in fact a B?
Because it's information. First off, the worksheet, like I described, it's things you're recording as you're reading it. I mentioned earlier that sometimes the bands, they get darker with time, and what may start out as a type with a question mark or an inconclusive over time may become a conclusive reading as it gets darker and more easy to read. There are times where you will record something as a potential inconclusive or with a question mark, and that's the way it stays. It just never gets any better.
What kind of information can those provide, though?
Well, potentially it can show, give you an idea what might not be there, but it is still not a conclusive result.
Okay. Now, we were talking about degradation yesterday and whether or not a degraded sample could turn from one blood type into another. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes, I do.
And you said that that is not a problem except with respect to one of the genetic marker systems. What did you mean by that?
Well, the majority of the markers that we look at, like I mentioned, as they degrade, they just get weaker and weaker, and you can't determine a type. It doesn't change into another type. The most notable exception to that is in the system that goes by the initials of EAP. EAP is a type of system that I mentioned before, that there were situations where it was the location of the band or the number of bands that tells you what type it is, and there are other ones that deal with intensity of the bands. EAP is one of those type of systems. You look at the intensity or how bright a band shows up to determine what the potential type is.
All right.
The intensities and take that into consideration when you're determining what the type is. So in the case of EAP, it is known that a degradation route occurs where the bands become less and less intense and can eventually be mistyped.
Now, with respect to the PGM subtype, do you have those same issues in PGM subtype that you have in EAP?
Not when it comes to evidentiary samples. It has been shown that liquid blood stored for a long period of time, you can start slowly losing the minus bands. You'll notice under the PGM subtype, there's a plus and a minus indication. It is possible to eventually see the minus bands degrade, but that does not occur in dried samples.
So in dried samples, such as a stain, what happens in the PGM subtype system when you get degradation?
The bands just become weaker and weaker to the point where when you develop it on the gel, you just don't see anything.
Can you have a situation in a PGM subtype where the bands have degraded so that you can see something there, but it's an inconclusive?
Oh, sure. That's another use of inconclusive, is that we know something is occurring. We can see that there's something there. Another indication we have goes by the initials of NA, or no activity. If you see kind of a hazy appearance in the band area, you can't say no activity because something is going on. So it'd be recorded as inconclusive.
So let's just take one example, item 13A, that has the PGM subtype of 1+. Now, is this a result that you classify as being inconclusive, or is this the final result?
That is a final result.
So what does that mean as opposed to an inconclusive result in this particular case?
It means that the blood stain that was present on that item is a PGM subtype 1+.
Okay, now, could have it been something else and degraded into a 1+?
Not in my experience or knowledge, no.
Okay. And in this particular case, the 1+ would be consistent with whom?
Well, of the three parties that are on this chart, it can be is consistent with the type that we found for item number 59, Nicole Brown, and is inconsistent with or definitely could not have come from the item number 17, Mr. Simpson, or number 60, Mr. Goldman.
Now, getting back to this issue that we were talking about on degradation, what about the ABO? Well, what about the ESD results? Can degradation cause those results to change from one pattern to another?
No,
And what about ABO?
not an ABO either. You won't get a change of a type.
So of the 4 systems that we have here, is EAP the only system that has this problem that you've been discussing, where the degradation can make it appear to be something other than what it really was?
That's correct.
Now, Mr. Matheson, is this phenomena that exists within the EAP system, but not the others, one that is recognized in the forensic science literature?
Yes, it is.
And have you read articles that discuss the special issues that are inherent in the EAP system?
Yes, I have.
Did you read a article, Mr. Matheson, that was by Dr. Grunbaum and Zajac, entitled Problems of Reliability in Phenotyping of Erythrocyte Acid Phosphatase in Bloodstains?
Yes, I have.
And did you consider that as part of this forensic science literature that we've been discussing that discusses this issue with EAP?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Goldberg, would you spell those items for the
Sure.
reporters, starting with Dr. Grunbaum?
Grunbaum is Grunbaum, and Zajac is Zajac. The article is Problems of Reliability in Phenotyping, Phenotyping, of erythrocyte, erythrocyte acid phosphatase, phosphatase.
Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, is erythrocyte acid phosphatase what we are designating with the initials EAP?
Yes, it is.
And in our preparations, in our sessions where we discussed the case prior to your testimony, did you teach me at some length how to pronounce that term?
Yes.
How did I do?
Sustained.
Okay. Now, with respect to the article that we just talked about, may I approach the witness?
Please.
Sir, I'm showing you an article that we just read the title of. Is this one of the articles that you looked at?
Yes, it is.
And on page 617 of that article, does Dr. Grunbaum discuss some of the issues that you've been explaining to us this morning about the EAP system?
Yes.
And can you read for us the first full paragraph of what Dr. Grunbaum says?
Although only a limited number of samples were used in this initial experiment, the results shown in Table 1 clearly indicate that there can be a definite problem with the EAP phenotyping no matter which electrophoretic supporting medium is used.
What does that mean?
Well, the electrophoretic supporting medium is, in the case that we showed, the example agarose. There's just different types of materials that can be run in. The paragraph just indicates that there can be problems with this using this system.
And can you read the second full paragraph?
Unlike other enzyme systems, EAP phenotyping depends not only on a pattern of relative distribution of bands, but also on the relative intensities of the bands. When blood is aged, the individual isozymes, those are the bands in it, I added it, tend to degrade at different rates, further exacerbating the difficulties of true phenotype identification.
And I think you've explained this already in your testimony in different terms. Is that correct?
Yes, basically.
And with respect to the last full paragraph under summary, can you read that for us?
I'm sorry, are we talking about the underlying part of the paragraph itself?
The paragraph.
Oh, under summary, excuse me. Erythrocyte acid phosphatase is a useful system for the crime laboratory for both fresh and degraded blood and blood stains. provided the inherent problems of phenotyping this particular enzyme system are recognized. Because of the great number of variables affecting this enzyme system in vitro, phenotyping should not be attempted unless the complete history of origin and handling of the sample is known.
Now, with respect to the last point about not typing erythrocyte acid phosphatase unless the complete history and origin of the sample is known, what does that refer to?
Well, his reference there, I believe, is suggesting that you should not be doing this unless you know exactly what the history of it is, which means where it was deposited, potentially the length of time, the conditions it was under, as opposed to somebody just walking into a laboratory with a blood stain.
No foundation that he knows what that author meant.
Sustained.
Sir, within the forensic science community, is there are there analysts that believe that you should know the complete history and origin of the sample before starting EAP testing, before making a EAP conclusion?
Sustained.
What did you understand that to mean in terms of your reading of the article and your interpretation of the article?
Well, my reading of that, I understand that it is being suggested that it's important to understand the history behind a sample and what conditions it was collected and preserved under.
And where do you stand on that particular issue as to whether or not that's necessary?
Well, I kind of sit in the middle of it. There are differences of opinion on this, and this has been an area of discussion when it comes to dealing with samples and serology in general, in that some people feel it's very important that the criminalist not be biased by any sort of outside information, to receive a blood stain, cold without anything, and you just report the results that you find. There are also those that believe, as indicated in that article, that it's important to know the background, the story behind how the sample was deposited, and taking all of that into account. I don't really believe in either extreme. I don't particularly like to work in the dark. That's very difficult to do. However, I also appreciate the fact that you do not want your opinion biased in any way by any information that isn't directly related to the evidence.
Okay. Now, with respect to the EAP system, you were talking about that in this system, that not only do you look at the bands, but you also look at the intensity of the bands. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Does that distinguish it from PGM subtype?
Yes.
Why?
Well, in PGM subtyping, it's the location of the band, where it appears in the gel in relation to your known standards, as opposed to how strong or how light the bands are.
So you're not looking at the intensity or brightness of the bands when you're talking about PGM subtype?
That's correct.
Given that you're looking at the intensity of the bands on EAP as opposed to PGM subtype, is there some element of subjectivity in terms of making a call as to an EAP result?
Yes, there is.
What is that?
Well, not only do these systems differ in intensity versus band location, they're also developed differently. The PGM system is developed, you get a dark blue, almost black band that you look at under visible light. In the EAP system, the bands you're looking at, you have to look under ultraviolet light. Rather than being dark, they are actually a light source. They're bright. And people's eyes see different things as far as the intensity of what they're looking at. It's a very subjective call.
So you don't have that problem though with PGM
No,
subtype? What about with ABO? Or is none of this applicable to ABO?
there's no comparison to ABO in this.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to mark as People's
217.
217 another board that says EAP phenotype board.
All right, 217.
Well, guys, I cheated and I got news for you. Oh, jeez. So it looks like Goldberg is here this entire video too. And it's a 2-hour video. Hold on. We got to look. We got to look. We got to look. We got to. He's still there. I don't know if Goldberg's still there. I mean, this guy is still there. This is definitely a new lawyer. So 100%, it can't go longer than 6 hours with Goldberg, because this guy is definitely a new. I mean, he's still here, so we're still going to see him for a few days. However, we're going to get to the defense at least 6 hours. I mean, at the most 6 hours from now, at the most. So that's today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day. I mean, I just really feel like I really want to do a terribly long OJ stream, like a 10-hour OJ stream on Monday. Would that be crazy? Just to pop, would that be too much? Would that be too 10 hours of OJ? I mean, you guys don't have to watch all 10 hours of OJ. Um, you guys don't have to, but you might want to. I want to. I do want to. That might we would get through the OJ trial faster, but I feel like that would be overkill, fatigue. Fatigue, we wouldn't be able to do it. I think here's what I think I'll do, which will make the OJ trial go faster in the best way possible. I think I'm going to start hanging around a little later during the OJ streams if it's juicy. If my blood pressure is through the roof and I'm screaming at the defense team and we've hit 2 hours, I think maybe I'll let it run a little bit longer there that way. So, maybe grab an extra 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. Um, that would that plus the speeding up the videos will take a large chunk of time out of this. And not only that, we're getting closer to the defense's side, their turn. So I feel like we're gonna want to do longer OJ videos real soon. This is gonna get really good. So we'll just listen. We have to get through this part to get to that part. So let's just keep going as we were going. And if if the if it gets juicy, then we'll keep. Now it's just not going to get juicy today. Today we have 38 more minutes. Yes, ma'am, we are. I know. I can't wait to get there. I'm really excited.
Mr. Fairtlow, can you lower that down a little bit so that perhaps we could also put some pictures on the Elmo later on? Mr. Matheson, showing you People's 217 for identification. What is this exhibit?
What this exhibit shows is a block diagram or kind of a graphical representation of the 6 most common EAP phenotypes.
And maybe we could just take a look at the photograph on the evidence testing board again that shows the plates on the electrophoresis machine. While we're waiting to put that up, can you go through the 6 common phenotypes and just explain to us what you're? Well, first of all, I know you've already described this, but a phenotype is what again?
What's the type that is observed on the gel that's identified for the eventual reporting?
Okay. And can you tell us what the 6 common EAP phenotypes are?
They appear in the right-hand column there. It's type A, type B, type C, type BA, type CB, and type CA.
And when you're testing a system using the EAP system, is it does it fall under one of these 6 types generally?
Generally, it does, yes.
All right. Now, if you can take a look at our evidence testing board, we have the photograph of items being loaded onto the gel. Can you just orient these 2 exhibits for us and tell us, I mean, how this would correlate?
Well, to put the 2 in relation to each other, if you were to take the electrophoresis plate that you see up there and rotate it 90 degrees to the left, where he's putting the samples in are what we refer to as the origin. That's the origin, the place where the samples start. And that would correspond in the EAP diagram to the line or the area that's marked with the word origin right above it.
And then you were talking about how after the electrophoresis machine is hooked up, the sample begins to migrate across the gel and that it creates a banding pattern. Can you describe for us what that would look like using the EAP phenotype board?
But using this as an example, you'd start at the origin. We've also mentioned lanes, and a lane would refer to an area where a sample is placed and then it moves along in roughly the same size and shape or configuration as where you originally put your sample. So in this particular example, we have 6 lanes that are marked by the 6 different types. Your sample would be placed in the origin a well at the origin, current would pass through it, and the different portions of the enzyme would be moving along, and at some point you stop that and develop it, and you'd see the bands in their location.
Now, you said that when you are looking at this plate, you look not only at the placement of the bands, but also intensity. Can you describe that for us using this diagram?
Well, it's a block diagram. It's not an actual photograph or something of a plate. It's just a graphical representation of it. We look at intensities in the system. We also look at locations of where the bands appear. It's a combination of the two. As you can see, under the lane that's marked A, the block diagram shows bands in different places than in the B. I also want to point out at this point that we show a block appearing on the far left of it in each of the lanes. This is just consistent with every type and is insignificant when it comes to determining what the type is in the sample. So you see that the location difference between the A and the B. However, also graphically demonstrated by this is the fact that there are different sizes, and the sizes are an indication of the intensity. You'll notice in the A, they're about equal size. They show up about equal intensity or brightness. The B, the larger block band, would show up as significantly brighter than the smaller block band in the B column, and then that's consistent throughout the rest of the items.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. I was so excited by this EAP block diagram. I didn't see that we had run over.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon. Please remember all my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Do not allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. We'll stand in recess until 1 p.m. Mr. Matheson, your order to return 1 p.m. All parties, including the clerk, are again present before the court. Let's have the jurors, please.
Your Honor, one issue I want to bring up, if I may.
What is that?
As to, there's an item 118 in this case that was tested by Mr. Matheson, and there has not been any testimony about it in this case heretofore. It was a knife that was found in the area of the defendant's house, but not on his property. Which was
Actually,
tested and has
Randy,
EAP.
you know, videos to put you to sleep, music or whatever, you know, cleaning rugs or cutting grass or whatever, music videos to put you to sleep are a big deal on YouTube right now. I should put that on every single OJ. All right. Sorry.
Type B, similar to the nails. I think it may have been mentioned by Mr. Cochran in his opening statement.
Sorry,
we
I
would,
coughed on you. I'm sorry.
ask to exclude evidence of that knife under 402 and the testing results on
We
it.
don't need to do that now.
Well, it's part of an analyzed evidence report that I'd like to show the witness, and there is reference to it there, and I would like to be able to sanitize that out.
Mr. Blazier?
Yeah, this is the same report that has all the results that they're testifying to. We intend to ask this witness about the other EAPB that came up on this knife with blood on it. And I don't see how he can limit the testimony to just a couple of things that he tested and not include other things he tested at the same time. The credibility of this whole argument depends on how you read EAP testing and how you read the bands, and that's relevant to 118 as well. And I think it's clearly fair game.
Which evidence report are we talking about?
Which analyzed evidence report?
Yes.
It's the analyzed evidence report that's dated 10/18/94.
That's the one I submitted yesterday, I believe, as well.
All right. I don't know anything about the facts and circumstances regarding the recovery of this alleged knife.
It was found in outside of Mr. Simpson's estate on July 2nd. Apparently, it had been put there at some point after the 13th. It had a lot of blood on it. It is consistent with the wounds on the victims. It was turned over to the police, and they ran the test and came up with an EAP-B. I also would like to request that the court order that be produced tomorrow for cross-examination.
Your Honor, may I correct counsel's representation to the court? There was a single thread of tiny speck of blood on the knife, on the very tip of the knife.
It doesn't matter, but I'll make an offer of proof that the person who found it will testify that there was a lot of blood on it.
Where was this found?
It was found near a brick wall, I think toward the back of the Rockingham estate, kind of down the way from the, I believe, the Rockingham side. It clearly hadn't been there the 13th. I mean, it was in relatively plain view, and someone had put it there. It was wrapped in a polka dotted outfit, or a blouse, I believe, that I believe also had blood on it, although I don't think that was tested.
Your Honor, the point of this is that it's entirely irrelevant. That's the problem. If what we have on the knife, excuse me, Mr. Blazier, if what we have on the knife is type EAP-B, then obviously it's not of either of our victims.
Mhm.
The victims in this case are BA and I think BA.
Is there a reason that you're
Right.
arguing this rather than Mr. Goldberg.
because I looked into this issue when Mr. Blazer informed me that he was going to be raising this issue with the court. Mr. Goldberg was in the process of examining the witness, and so didn't have the opportunity to inform himself of the issues as I did. It's just more expeditious if I address it than if I sit and whisper in Mr. Goldberg's ear and have him address the court. So what we have is an item of evidence that is entirely irrelevant based on the testing that was done.
All right, prosecution, neither side may mention 118 until I have some more information about where it came from, when, and what it is. Prosecution's ordered to produce that item in court tomorrow morning.
Okay. Would the court also like some documentation as to the time and method of recovery, et cetera?
Yeah, we're not going to use it till I know where it came from. Right, and as I indicated, this is the first mention of this item to the court.
May we have permission then to use a redacted copy of the analyzed evidence report at this time, pending the court's further ruling?
For today, yes. But I want all the reports produced tomorrow and the item. All right, let's proceed. Let's have the jury, please.
In the court's ruling, we would ask for permission to reopen if the court were going to allow this. Because I do expect it to finish my direct sometime
Today.
in the mid-afternoon.
Okay. I'll take that, once we see what it is, we'll see. But since I know nothing about it, and this is the first time I've been advised of the existence of this item, but I'd rather use the time with the jury to finish at least the basic blood testing.
Then we'll complete direct subject to the court's determination on that
Yes.
item.
Record should reflect that we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Matheson, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, let the record reflect that Mr. Gregory Matheson is again on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Goldberg. Good afternoon, Mr. Matheson.
Good afternoon.
You're reminded, sir, you were still under oath, and Mr. Goldberg, you may continue with your direct examination.
Okay, we were talking about erythrocyte acid phosphatase and the different phenotypes. Now, is there a particular pattern in which EAP type BA is known to degrade?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, in general, the A bands are more labile or less stable. And next comes the B and the C. So in the case of the type BA, excuse me, they're all losing activity to some extent, but the A bands, being the most labile, the most sensitive to degradation, are going to disappear first before the B bands.
By the way, when a sample is deposited at a crime scene, when does the degradation process start?
It starts immediately as soon as the blood leaves the body.
So is it common in the Los Angeles Police Department to test samples in the serology section that have some degree of degradation in them?
I would say every sample, to some extent, has some degree of degradation occurring.
If the degradation is to the extent where one marker is no longer typable, but you're still able to type another marker. Say you can't type EAP, but you can still type PGM subtype. Does the fact that one of the markers has been lost in any way undermine the confidence of the results in the PGM subtype?
No, it doesn't.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I wanted the witness just to show us how these items degrade by drawing on this diagram. Does the court want a permanent record of that by using the acetate?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Matheson, maybe you could step down and pull the acetate over and just having what?
Foundation as to his knowledge regarding the manner in which these things degrade.
Sir, have you read articles regarding this degradation issue with respect to the EAP?
Yes, I have.
When did you first become familiar with it, the issue?
I first became aware of it in the class that I mentioned. I took the FBI Academy back in 1982, the degradation route of this particular system.
And was it well known in the forensic community in that time?
It was included as part of a curriculum, so I believe so.
Okay, in addition to that kind of study about this phenomenon EAP, have you yourself personally witnessed it as a serologist working in the Los Angeles Police Department serology laboratory?
Yes, I have.
How so?
I've witnessed the phenomenon or this condition to occur in a couple of cases. One that comes to mind was a case in which a number of markers were run. The only difference in any of them was in the EAP system, a similar type of thing where had it been a BA, it would have been consistent with the party that we had reason to believe it came from. We got results in the rest of the markers, they matched. The EAP exhibited a type B, which gave us concern about it, knowing that that was a degradation route. That was one example of where we feel we've seen it in case.
Okay, now, I wanted to ask you about this degradation route, and maybe just using arrows, you could just write out what the degradation route is with respect to a type BA. How it degrades. Maybe you can just write out the letters BA and just show us with arrows. Okay, well, here, I'm sorry.
Staying for phrase question.
What? Okay. You said that a type BA can degrade into a B. Okay, so I'll just write a little arrow down to B.
A BA can degrade until it can look like or be confused with a B.
Okay, and maybe I may have been phrasing some of my questions inartfully. Does the type actually change, or is it the appearance that changes?
Well, it's the appearance. It's what we are seeing as far as our development is what actually changes.
Okay, so is this phenomena of BA to B one that you have seen in your work and also that's been noted in the forensic science literature?
Yes.
Okay, but does it happen the other way around? I mean, can you get it to degrade from a B to a BA?
No.
So there is a defined degradation route with respect to this marker?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, the A bands are the least stable, then comes the B, and then the C.
Mr. Matheson, maybe you could just flip that acetate over for us. And there are some magnetic strips. Can you tell us, using the BA type phenotype on this diagram, show us how it would appear, how it would degrade to appear as a type B?
Like I mentioned, the A bands in a degradation process would be the ones that would start disappearing first. So eventually you get to a point, notice how this one is significantly larger. It's the most intense in a BA. Eventually you'd have a loss of these two bands as it degrades and gets weaker. You'd also, to some extent, have some lessening of the intensity of this one. Let me just Okay, the first two items that you put on where you put cover-ups over the A bands in the BA system. Yes.
And can you tell us where the B bands in that system are, in the B band?
That's a combination between these two, but this is the major B band.
So you're referring to the diagram, and you just pointed to the, starting from the right side of the diagram, it would be the first block and the third block,
Yes,
and you've covered up the second and the fourth blocks.
that's correct.
And can you show us, using this diagram, the comparison between the B and the BA when the A bands are?
Well, again, using just the block diagram showing relative locations of it, once the A bands have degraded, these stay in the same position, which are in the same position as the B bands. And you can see the relative intensities are such that the upper band.
Maybe we could,
1492 again, from there.
maybe we can lift this up a little bit. Or maybe we can clean this over here.
Move it up.
Maybe with the court's permission, we could just go over this portion one more time of his testimony.
Hold on. Briefly, since there's an indication that the jurors in the back row didn't see this.
Let's take the magnetic strips off. Now, there were two magnetic strips that you put on the type BA phenotype first. Can you do that again?
Yeah, I'm going to be placing them on covering in the type BA, covering over the two A bands.
And when you say A bands, does this diagram indicate in some fashion that those are the A bands?
Yes, right across the top of the diagram is indicated the different bands A, B, A, and C.
All right. And once the A bands are covered on the type BA, does that then begin to look like any other pattern that's contained on this chart?
Yes.
What pattern?
Then you can see that the general location is still the same as the B pattern, and the relative intensities between the two bands is consistent in that the third one from the right is more intense than the first one from the right.
And then you put on a third cover.
Well, this is merely to indicate the degradation is occurring on all the items, so you're actually going to have some lessening of the intensity of this B band. But it's still in relation to the other one, it's going to be brighter, more intense.
And when you see this particular pattern, from a degraded BA sample on an electrophoresis plate, can you tell that it's been degraded by looking at the plate, or what does it look like?
Just by looking at the plate, as long as both bands are there, no, you can't. It still looks like a B.
And why is it that one of the bands for the type BA phenotype is under what appears to be C?
Well, the identification of either a type B or a C is independent of its location. In other words, if you have a band that shows up in the 1 or the 3 position, just the mere presence of a band doesn't indicate whether it's a B or a C or a combination of a BC. It has to do with the intensity. A C, the band farthest to the right is most intensive brightest. A B, the one towards the left, is most intensive brightest.
Okay, so if there is a slight decrease in brightness of what you're calling the second B band on the type BA in a degraded sample that you've created with the cover-ups, why would that still be called as a type B?
Well, it's just slight degradation. You'd call it a B, depending on the intensity differences or relationship between the band on the far right and the third one. As long as the third one is more intense than the first one, then it's a B.
Okay, and is this the manner in which this phenomena of mistyping a BA as a B can occur?
As far as my understanding, yes.
So what you're doing here is you're looking at the relative intensity on the type BA phenotype between the B in comparison to the band that is under where it says C,
That's correct.
and the existence of those two bands.
Yes.
What things are you looking at other than intensity in calling the B in calling the BA as a B?
We're looking at band location and the absence of the A bands. If the A bands are not present and you have a band in what's described, if there's the C column and the B column, and the B one is more intense, then it's going to be called a B. It looks like a B.
So if we're looking at the true B phenotype, which is more intense between the band under where it says C and the band under where it says B?
The one under B.
And is that why this is larger on the block diagram?
Yes, that indicates brightness or intensity.
Okay, and then if you compare the BA degraded phenotype to the B phenotype, is the relative intensities of the respective bands the same
Yes, in that the one under the B column is brighter than the one under the C column.
in both of them?
That's correct.
Now, Mr. Matheson, if it is known that the EAP system has this problem, why is it used for forensic testing?
Well, it still has some value in that you can get information out of it. If you don't have a degraded sample, it's a very good system because of the way the different types break down, like I mentioned before, in the percentages. And it is a reasonably robust system in that it is detectable in stains and that type of thing. Plus, it can be analyzed along with other enzymes. There's no problem with using something like this as long as you're aware of its limitations.
And what are its limitations?
Just what we've been discussing, in that you can get selective degradation that can cause one type to look like another one.
Now, when you're doing the EAP testing, do you have to consume any additional sample in order to run this test?
It depends on how you run it. There are what are called single systems, where when you run your electrophoresis plate, the only thing that you analyze for is, say, the EAP system. In this particular case, and with procedures that we have in place in our laboratory, we have a system that allows us to run PGM subtyping and EAP using the exact same sample, the exact same gel. So it doesn't use any more sample to get this information.
So in this particular case, were you able to get the EAP information without consuming any additional sample
That's correct.
over and above what you were using in PGM subtyping?
Correct.
Why is that of concern?
What are
as
you
to how
getting
much
after
sample you're
this,
using?
John?
Well, that's always a concern when it comes to forensic serology. You don't want to use any more than necessary.
Oh.
You preserve as much of the sample for either retesting or confirmation at a later time.
John.
Now, I'd like to return to the serology results board. Now, Mr. Matheson, what were the EAP results on the reference files in this case?
The results on item number 17, reference blood marks coming from Mr. Simpson, EAP type BA. Item number 59 from Nicole Brown, EAP type BA. And item number 60, Mr. Goldman, it's an EAP type A.
Now, if the suspect in a case is a type BA, and you have run the test and it looks like a B when you run the test, does that include or exclude the suspect?
It excludes.
Now, given the known degradation issue that you talked about with respect to the BA type, can you say that the suspect did not contribute that sample?
Well, in and on the face, if you know for a fact that it is a type B and cannot be a degradation product, then yes, it does in fact exclude them. If you cannot totally eliminate the fact that a degradation did occur, then you can't use that as an absolute excluder.
So if you cannot eliminate the possibility of degradation, is a type B result an exclusion of a suspect who is type BA?
It's not an absolute exclusion, no. You just have to keep in mind that you are seeing a B, but a degraded BA is a possibility.
Now, at this time, I'd like to mark a copy of the analyzed evidence report. It's People's 218 for identification.
All right, analyzed evidence report. What's the date on the report?
This is page 3 of the report that was dated September 18th.
September 18th.
And I'm going to put a 217 on the reverse side of that. Excuse me, October 18th.
This is 218. 218.
Have to lower the serology results board again.
I
While he's doing that,
wasn't
Mr. Matheson, did you?
I wasn't feeling bad for Mr. Matheson because it seemed like he was able to hold his own with questioning. But my Lord, now I'm starting to feel pretty bad for him.
Do some testing on the fingernail scrapings, some fingernail scrapings, item number 84A and B.
Yes, I did.
And I want to ask you some questions about your report as to the results on those items. Can we see the paragraph that says 84A and B?
Yes, I do.
And does that relate your findings with respect to the fingernail scrapings underneath the fingernails on 84A and B?
It's a narrative explanation of the results, yes.
And can you tell us what you wrote there as depicted on this particular report, if you can read it
Yes.
off the screen?
It's says item number 84A and 84B could not have come from Nicole Brown Simpson, Ronald Gorman, or O.J. Simpson, period. However, Nicole Brown Simpson cannot be excluded as a source of the stain if the EAP type B observed on the items were degraded from a type BA.
All right. So would it be a fair reading of the report if someone were to say that this categorically excluded Nicole Brown Simpson, Ronald Goldman, or O.J. Simpson of being a donor of the material underneath the fingernail?
Well, it categorically excludes two of them. It does not absolutely exclude Nicole Simpson or Nicole Brown.
What about Nicole Brown? Okay. Now, when you wrote that second sentence that Nicole Brown could not be excluded as a possible donor, why did you write that?
The reason that it's in there is, first off, there's two markers that were identified on those items, the PGM subtype and the EAP. Used the PGM subtype to eliminate the other two parties involved. That left Nicole Brown. And then this issue, knowing that a BA can be degraded into a B, I wanted to include that in there so that there was no confusion as to an absolute statement of exclusion on her part.
That's fine. Let's see the serology results for it. Maybe a little bit. Okay, now you were saying that you could exclude of the 3 individuals that we have the reference files for, everyone except Nicole Brown, as to item number 84A and B, the nail scrapings. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, using this chart, can you show us where the PGM subtype result is for the fingernail scrapings, 84A and 84B?
Well, if you go across in the column marked 84A, 84B, there's 2 empty squares, and then you get a notation of a 1+. That is under the column marked PGM subtype.
And why do you say that you can exclude Orenthal Simpson as being a donor of that particular material?
Because in the PGM subtype system, he is a 2+, 2-, and the result obtained on those was a 1+.
So in reporting that, have you looked at our chart and compared the 1+ under 84A and B to the 2+, 2- under 17 Orenthal Simpson?
Yes, I did.
Maybe you can point with the pointer so we can all see where you're looking at these.
The results on the 2 evidence items, 84A and 84B, are in this column right here. Like I described before, 3 over from the item description, 1+ and 1+. And up on the top, under the same column, PGM subtype, opposite item number 17, is the notation 2+, 2-.
And can you tell us how it is that Ronald Goldman can be excluded as a donor of 84A and B?
It's in the same system. The 2 evidence items again gave us a 1+ and a 1+. Mr. Goldman was a 2+, 1+. So in the absence of the 2+ here, he can be eliminated as a source of the blood.
And why is it that you cannot eliminate Nicole Brown as being a source of the blood?
Again, on the nail scrapings, the PGM subtype is a 1+ in both instances, and she was found to be a PGM subtype 1+.
Okay, but what about the difference in EAP type?
Well, as noted in the report, initially she is excluded. However, we also have to consider the fact that BA can degrade to look like a B. So on face value, on the results that were obtained, she can be excluded. However, taking into account the degradation route of that particular enzyme, I would not do a total exclusion on her.
I'd like to mark as people's next in order an electrophoresis worksheet that contains a reference to 84A and B. It's 219 on the reverse side of this. Now, sir, what is the document that we're looking at now?
What you're seeing is kind of an enlarged portion of a section of a worksheet that we have that's called an electrophoresis worksheet.
And was part of this document filled out by you?
All except for a couple of initials was filled out by myself.
Now, with respect to the 85A and 85B results, excuse me, 84A and 84B results, that's the fingernail scrapings that we're talking about. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, what did you write on the electrophoresis worksheet when you filled out this document with respect to those results?
Okay, under the column that's marked EAP, there's 2 rows of letters. The one on the left is the row that I put in when I first read the plate. And opposite, you go from the left to the right, reading, it's got the DR number associated with this case, 84A and 84B on those 2 lines. You'll notice that the first column under EAP has a B with a question mark on it.
Is that what you wrote?
Yes, it is.
What does the question mark signify? Because I see you have it in a number of places.
It indicates that on my first reading, I wasn't sure. It looked like a B, but I wasn't absolutely positive of it.
And why is it that you had that question in your question in your mind that caused you to put the question mark on the electrophoresis worksheet?
Well, on this particular item, I believe the bands were on the light side and kind of diffused. They were a little fuzzy. They just weren't good looking bands.
Maybe I can just put our EAP block diagram up again. Just click that. It's not going to work. I'm going to have to learn how to lift this easel. Mr. Matheson, when you looked at the electrophoresis plate when you were testing item 84, A and B, with respect to the bands at the end that all of the phenotypes share in common, were those present?
I believe in the case of at least one, if not both of them, that band was either very weak or not present at all.
Can you show us what it looked like using the block diagram and the
Well, basically, it would have bands in the area consistent with the standards for the 2B bands, and then this area up here there was nothing present.
What are those bands called? The bands that all of the items share in common that are represented on the left side of the EAP phenotype board.
I've always understood them to be called storage bands.
And is there any diagnostic significance to them in terms of trying to figure out what the item in question is?
They have no bearing on what the type is, no.
But in this particular case, that band was not there.
I don't believe so, no.
What else about the bands looked strange to you or different to you that caused you to write the question mark?
No, they were just not very distinct. They were on the light side, and they were not very obvious distinct bands.
And when you wrote the analyzed evidence report, why don't you just simply transpose whatever's on the electrophoresis worksheet onto the analyzed evidence report and call it as a B question mark?
Well, like I previously mentioned, this is a worksheet. It's something that's created during the course of our reading the bands. These plates are never run or read alone. You always have somebody co-read it, and that's what the second column is for. And then the information that's put on the final report is the final conclusion of what is seen to be present.
Now, when you are testing a blood sample and you get a result from if you got a result from a known blood sample that you knew to be type BA blood that was identical to the result that you got in 84A and 84B, in this case, how would it be called?
If I understand the question right, you're saying I have two samples, one of which I know is a type BA.
Let's say you have one sample, let's say it's from someone in your laboratory that you're using as a reference sample, and they're a known type BA. Yet when you test it, you get the same result that you got on 84A and 84B.
It would be an indication that that blood has degraded, that we have a problem with it.
How would you call it, though?
Well, in this case, I know what it's supposed to be, and I would not call a result from that.
But would it look the same in appearance, or could it look the same in appearance as to what you saw in 84A and 84B? Okay. Could degraded blood, BA blood, give the same appearance as what you saw?
Yes, it could.
Now, is there when you're making your call for the purposes of your report, do you consider at that time anything other than what you saw on the plate itself?
Not as far as the result that's put down, no.
And why is that?
Because that's the result. You know, when you have something that is present, particularly in the case of electrophoresis, on the plate, it is readable, it's giving a type, then that is the type that needs to be reported.
And what about the suggestion by some analysts that you should also take into account the history and the origin of the stain? Do you do that at that particular point in time?
To some extent, that's why the second part of that paragraph, initially excluding, but then with the proviso of the fact that it is only exclusion if it's not a degraded sample.
So at the time that you wrote that paragraph, did you take the step of taking a look or trying to take a look at the history and origin of the sample in question, 84A and 84B?
Well, the main fact that I took into account is where the sample came from, and that was under the victim's fingernails.
Did you take a look at any crime scene photographs at that time, the time you wrote your report?
Not at the time I'd written the report, but I have seen many photographs of the scene.
Since then?
Since then and prior to then, yes.
Now, in terms of looking at the history and origin of the stain, from a forensic science standpoint, is there anything else that can be
I don't know. Cross country is when Linus came to Texas.
done in order to resolve the
Ah.
issue of 84A and 84B by looking at other samples at the crime scene?
There is some information that can be derived from that.
And specifically what?
Looking at other evidence items that were collected, particularly those where we feel we know the source of the blood sample.
Okay. I sliced it right there. Precision, professionalism. And I'm not muted. Imagine that. All right, guys. We did it. We did it. We did it. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Thank you so much for coming out today. I hope to see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If you don't know when that is, here's the link. So I'm having a special live stream tomorrow to thank everybody who has supported this channel, and I'll be gifting 60 um, memberships. So make sure your membership is turned on, and like make sure you chat a little bit. I think it raises your odds of. Oops, that's not right. It raises your odds of getting a membership. I don't know that for a fact. You know, YouTube with their rules. I don't know, no, but I think. That's the link. If you click that link right now, it'll tell you how long until the live stream. So don't ask me what time the live stream is, because I don't know where you are, and I don't know what time it is where you are, and I can't convert for every single person, but I can give you that link to click. And you can, set all kinds of alarms, at least 13 alarms, so that you don't forget tomorrow to stop in. If you've set less than 13 alarms, I don't think you're going to win a membership. That's a lie. I just lied. Mm. Thanks for coming out, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you again really, really soon. Bye, guys.